The roar from the stands was still ringing in Nancy Carter's ears when the world came crashing down. 1 second she was on top of the world, having just assisted the winning goal in the semifinals that propelled Pacific Northwest University to the national championship game. And the next, her lips were locked with Valerie Brooks in a kiss that felt like destiny. The crowd had cheered at first, mistaking it for pure elation between teammates. But Coach Harlan had seen it all from the sidelines, his face turning beet red as he marched onto the field. "Carter! Brooks! My office now!" he bellowed, the joy evaporating like mist. By the time they reached the locker room, the rumors were already flying. Nancy's heart pounded as she stood before the coach, Valerie beside her, their hands brushing secretly for support. "What you two did out there is unacceptable," Harlan spat, slamming a clipboard on his desk. "This isn't some soap opera. We have a reputation to uphold. Nancy, you're suspended from the team effective immediately. No finals. No scholarship review. We're calling it team conduct violation, but we both know what this is about." Nancy's stomach twisted. At 22, she had poured every ounce of her being into soccer since she was 5, dreaming of the Olympics, the pros. Pacific Northwest had given her the platform as their star striker, leading scorer for 3 seasons straight. And Valerie, the 21-year-old midfielder who transferred from a small college in Oregon 2 years ago, had become her everything in secret. Late-night practices turning into stolen moments, whispered confessions under the stars after away games. They had hidden it perfectly until that impulsive kiss. Now the price was clear. She tried to argue, her voice steady despite the panic. "Coach, it was just a moment of celebration. It doesn't affect my play." But Harlan cut her off with a laugh that chilled her. "Save it, Carter. The athletic director's already been called. Parents are being notified. This ends here." Valerie remained silent, her eyes downcast, but Nancy could feel the tremor in her shoulder. As they left the office, the hallway was lined with teammates staring. Some with pity, others with judgment. Emily, Nancy's supposed best friend and backup striker, avoided her gaze entirely. Nancy's phone buzzed immediately. Her mother from Texas. "Nancy, what is this I'm hearing on the news? You and some girl? We didn't raise you this way." The drive back to her apartment was a blur. Valerie sat in the passenger seat, tears streaming. "I'm so sorry, Nancy. I shouldn't have let you kiss me there. Your career, everything you've worked for." Nancy gripped the wheel tighter. "No. I kissed you because I love you. And I'm not apologizing for that. Not to him, not to anyone." But as she said it, doubt crept in. Was love worth losing her spot in the biggest game of her life? The national finals were in 4 days. Without her, the team was vulnerable. Valerie was good, but not the finisher Nancy was. That night, alone in her room after Valerie left to avoid more suspicion, Nancy stared at her jersey hanging on the wall. The number 9, her lucky charm. Tears fell as she replayed the kiss in her mind, the one that had felt so right but unleashed hell. Her phone kept lighting up with messages from distant relatives, old high school coaches, even sponsors. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted her to explain herself. But how could she explain something that had been growing inside her for 2 years, something that made her feel alive for the first time? The next morning the campus newspaper ran the headline, "PNW star suspended over same-sex kiss." Nancy read it 3 times, each word burning deeper. She had always been the golden girl, straight-A student, captain, the one coaches praised for leadership. Now she was the cautionary tale. When Valerie texted asking if they could meet at the old practice field behind the stadium, Nancy almost said no. But she went anyway. Valerie was already there, kicking a ball against the fence, her ponytail swinging with each strike. "I talked to my parents," she said without looking up. "They're okay. Worried but okay. Yours?" Nancy laughed bitterly. "Mom hung up on me. Dad texted that I'm no longer welcome at Christmas." The words hung between them like fog. Valerie finally turned, her dark eyes searching Nancy's face. "We can still fix this. I'll tell the coach it was my fault, that I initiated it. Maybe they'll let you back for finals." Nancy stepped closer, taking Valerie's hands. "I don't want you to lie for me. I'm done hiding, Val. If that means I sit out the biggest game of my life, then that's the price." But even as she said the brave words, her chest tightened. She could already feel the future she had mapped out slipping away. Scouting reports, pro contracts, the Olympic trials next summer. All of it traded for one public kiss. Back at the apartment complex, Emily was waiting on the steps. Her arms were crossed, jaw set. You really screwed us all, Carter. The team's a mess without you. Coach is riding everyone twice as hard. And for what? A girl. The betrayal stung worse than the suspension. Emily had been the one Nancy confided in about everything, except Valerie. How long have you known? Nancy asked quietly. Emily looked away. Long enough. I saw you two at the away game in Seattle. I didn't say anything then. But after the kiss I had to tell Coach. This team has rules. We can't have that kind of distraction. Nancy felt the ground shift beneath her. The friend she had trusted for 3 years had been the one to pull the trigger. You had to, she repeated. Or you wanted to? Emily didn't answer. She just walked away, leaving Nancy alone with the realization that the real war wasn't just with the coach or her parents. It was inside the very team she had bled for. By afternoon, the athletic department had made it official. Nancy Carter was out for the season. No appeal, no hearing. The email cited violation of team code of conduct regarding personal relationships. Valerie had been spared. Officially warned but allowed to play. Nancy sat on her couch staring at the screen, the words blurring. She had sacrificed summers, birthdays, relationships with boys she never really wanted, all for this sport. And now one honest moment had erased it. Her phone rang again, her father this time. Nancy, your mother is crying in the kitchen. Do you have any idea what this does to our church? To our name? She listened to the lecture she had heard her whole life. Family values, sin, disappointment. When he finally paused for breath, she said the words she had practiced in the mirror. Dad, I'm gay. I've known since I was 15. Valerie isn't a phase. She's the person I love. The silence on the line was heavier than any yell. Then maybe you need to figure out who you are without us, he said finally and hung up. Valerie arrived an hour later with takeout and red-rimmed eyes. They ate in silence on the floor, backs against the couch. The team had an emergency meeting, Valerie said softly. Half the girls think you're a hero for standing up. The other half they're scared. Emily's telling everyone the kiss cost us the title. Nancy set her fork down. Let her. I'm not going to beg. But inside the fear gnawed. What if Valerie started to resent her? What if the guilt of watching the finals from the sidelines broke them? That night they lay in bed facing each other, fingers intertwined. Remember the first time we really talked? Valerie whispered. Nancy smiled despite everything. You were subbing in during that blizzard game in Montana. I passed you the ball and you scored the equalizer. After, in the hotel, you asked if I ever got tired of carrying the team. Valerie nodded. You said carrying it alone was the only way you knew how. That night I realized I wanted to carry it with you. The memory hurt now. Nancy had spent years building walls, perfect grades, perfect stats, perfect straight girl persona. Valerie had quietly dismantled every brick. The next day Nancy tried to train alone at the community field. A group of local kids recognized her and asked for autographs. One little girl with pigtails looked up and said, My mom says you're bad now. Nancy signed the ball anyway, throat tight. On the way home she stopped at the campus coffee shop and overheard 2 girls from the volleyball team whispering. She seemed so normal. Normal. The word echoed. She had never felt normal until Valerie. Back at the apartment Valerie was pacing. I talked to the athletic director. He said if you issue a public apology and say it was a mistake, they might reconsider for next season. Nancy stared at her. An apology for loving you? Valerie looked away. I don't want you to lose everything because of me. The words landed like a punch. For the first time Nancy saw the fear in Valerie's eyes. Not just for the team but for them. If I apologize I lose me, Nancy said quietly. And I think I'd lose you too eventually. Valerie didn't argue. She just pulled Nancy into a hug that felt more desperate than tender. That evening the local news ran a segment. Former teammates from high school were interviewed. One said, she was always focused. This came out of nowhere. Another added, we're praying for her. Nancy turned off the TV and cried for the first time in front of Valerie without holding back. I don't want their prayers, she sobbed. I just wanted to play. Valerie held her, rocking gently. You still can. Somewhere. With me. But the words felt hollow against the reality of cancelled scholarship checks and pro scouts crossing her name off lists. 2 days before the finals, the team bus left campus without Nancy. She watched from her window as it pulled away, Valerie's face pressed to the glass in the back row. The apartment felt too big, too quiet. She spent the morning cleaning out her locker, cleats, shin guards, the captain's armband she had worn with pride. Each item carried memories. The game-winning header against Stanford, the overtime win in the rain at Oregon. All of it tainted now. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news. Proud of you for being real. Former PNW player 18. The message should have helped. Instead, it reminded her how many others had probably stayed silent out of fear. She replied with a simple thank you and blocked the urge to spiral. Valerie called from the hotel in Chicago that night. The girls are quiet. Coach keeps saying focus on the game. But everyone knows what he means. Nancy tried to sound strong. Play your heart out tomorrow. For both of us. Valerie's voice cracked. It doesn't feel right without you yelling at me from the wing. They stayed on the phone until Valerie fell asleep, Nancy listening to her steady breathing like a lifeline. The next morning Nancy drove to the airport anyway. She couldn't stay away. She bought a ticket with the last of her savings and flew standby to Chicago, arriving just as the stadium lights flickered on. She sat in the nosebleed section wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, heart hammering. The national championship final. PNW versus Michigan State. Without her, the starting lineup looked fragile. Valerie started at midfield, but her first touch was heavy, her passes tentative. By halftime the score was 2-0 Michigan State. The crowd, mostly neutral fans, began murmuring. Nancy could hear isolated voices chanting her name. We want Carter. It grew. Then someone added Valerie's name. Nancy and Valerie. The chant spread through sections like wildfire. On the field Valerie looked up into the stands, scanning desperately. Nancy pulled her hood lower, tears burning. In the second half PNW clawed back one goal. But the rhythm was off. Emily missed an easy shot. Coach Harlan paced the sideline, face grim. The chant grew louder, drowning out the PA announcer. Nancy. Valerie. Nancy. Valerie. Security started moving through the stands, but the crowd only got louder. Nancy's phone lit up with texts from Valerie's number even though she was on the field. I hear you. I feel you. She hadn't sent anything. Valerie had just known. With 10 minutes left, Michigan State scored again. 3-1. The chant turned into a roar. Fans stood, holding up phones, filming the moment the entire stadium demanded the two women who had been punished for loving each other. On the bench Emily buried her face in her hands. Coach Harlan looked pale. Nancy slipped out before the final whistle, heart shattered but strangely lighter. She had lost the game, the scholarship, maybe her family. But the crowd had seen her. They had seen them. Valerie found her outside the stadium 2 hours later, still in uniform, eyes swollen. They didn't speak at first. Valerie just walked into Nancy's arms and held on like the world might end if she let go. We lost 3-2, she whispered. But the chant didn't stop until the clock hit 0. Nancy kissed the top of her head. I heard every second. They drove to a cheap motel near the airport because neither wanted to face the team hotel. In the room Valerie finally broke. Emily came up to me after the game. She said she was sorry, that she didn't think it would go this far. Nancy laughed without humor. Sorry doesn't get me back on the field. Valerie looked up, fierce. No, but maybe it starts something bigger. The athletic director texted me. There's already talk of a policy review. The alumni are furious. Nancy shook her head. I don't want to be a cause. I just wanted to play soccer and love you. Valerie cupped her face. You can still do both. Just not there. The truth settled between them. PNW was finished. But maybe somewhere else. The next morning the internet exploded. Clips of the crowd chant had gone viral. Nancy and Valerie trended nationwide. Sponsors who had dropped Nancy were now sending cautious emails. A women's pro league scout reached out directly. We don't care who you love. We care if you can score. For the first time in days Nancy felt a spark of hope. But family was another story. Her mother called while they were packing. Your father saw the videos. He's confused. He said maybe we were too hard. Nancy gripped the phone. Mom, I'm not confused. I'm in love. The line was quiet. Then her mother said the words Nancy had waited years to hear. We want to meet her. When you're ready. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a door cracking open. Valerie's parents were already planning a visit to California. They want to cook for us, Valerie said, smiling for the first time in days. Dad's making his famous lasagna. Nancy laughed. I'll eat anything that isn't airplane food. On the flight home, Valerie rested her head on Nancy's shoulder. I was scared I'd lose you to the game, she admitted. That you'd choose soccer over us. Nancy turned, kissing her temple. I chose us. And it hurt like hell. But I'd do it again. The words felt true now. The price had been steep. Lost scholarship, lost season, lost reputation. But the freedom on the other side was something she had never known. Back on campus, the stares were different. Some hostile, most curious. A group of freshmen stopped them in the quad. You two are kind of legends, one said. Nancy smiled tightly. We're just two girls who fell in love. Valerie squeezed her hand. And one really good soccer player who got screwed. The weeks after the finals blurred into meetings, interviews, and hard decisions. The university offered Nancy a reinstatement for next season if she signed a personal conduct agreement. She read the document once and tore it in half in the athletic director's office. I won't promise to hide who I am. Valerie stood beside her, silent support. The director looked almost relieved. Then we have to part ways. But the door's open if you change your mind. Nancy didn't. She transferred her remaining credits to a smaller Division II school in Oregon that had reached out after the viral moment, Coastal University, where the coach openly said, "We want players who play with heart, not players who hide it." The scholarship was smaller, the stadium smaller, but the team welcomed both her and Valerie with open arms. Emily sent a long email apologizing in detail. Nancy read it twice, then replied with one line. I hope you find the courage to be yourself one day too. She never heard back. Her parents flew out for a weekend. The dinner was awkward at first, her father stiff, her mother overcompensating with questions about Valerie's major. But when Valerie scored the winning goal in a preseason scrimmage and Nancy cheered louder than anyone, her father finally smiled. You two look happy, he said quietly on the drive back to the airport. That's what matters. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to start rebuilding. The real test came in October when the new season began. Nancy stepped onto the Coastal field for her first official game wearing number 9 again. Valerie was in the starting 11. When the whistle blew, the old fear tried to creep back. What if they lose me? What if the crowd turns? But it didn't last. She scored in the 23rd minute. The small crowd chanted Nancy, Valerie. Anyway, this time it felt like celebration, not protest. After the game, Valerie found her in the tunnel. You did it, she whispered. Nancy pulled her close, ignoring the cameras. We did it. The kiss was quick, public, and completely unafraid. No coach stormed over. No parents called in rage. Just applause and the knowledge that they had paid the price and come out stronger. But the internal scars remained. Some nights Nancy still woke up sweating, dreaming of the empty bench in Chicago. Valerie would hold her until the shaking stopped. You're allowed to grieve what you lost, she'd say. Just don't let it steal what you have now. Those words became their anchor. By the end of the season, Coastal had made the Division II playoffs. Nancy led the conference in goals. Scouts from bigger leagues were back, this time asking about both of them. The Women's Professional League announced a new inclusivity policy, citing the Carter Brooks moment as the catalyst. Nancy laughed when she read the press release. They banned me, then named a policy after me. Irony much. Valerie graduated in May. Nancy still had 1 year left. They moved into a tiny apartment near campus with second-hand furniture and a ridiculous number of plants. Life wasn't perfect. Nancy's father still struggled with pronouns sometimes. Old teammates unfollowed them online. But the weight that had crushed her in Chicago was gone. On the 1-year anniversary of the kiss that changed everything, they returned to the Pacific Northwest University Stadium as spectators. The new team was playing a home game. During halftime, the announcer asked the crowd to welcome Two special guests who reminded us all that courage on the field starts with courage off it. The spotlight found them. The chant started again. Nancy. Valerie. But this time it was warm, grateful. Walking out afterward hand in hand, Nancy stopped under the stadium lights. I used to think losing that final was the worst thing that could happen, she said. Now I know it was the best. Valerie smiled, the same smile that had started it all. We paid a hell of a price, but we got to keep each other. They drove home in comfortable silence, the city lights blurring past. Nancy glanced at Valerie in the passenger seat, hair loose, humming along to the radio, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. In the end, was Nancy right to choose love over her dream, or was it all a terrible mistake?